Hello and welcome to the Hitch API chat. As always, it's Bruno and I talking about what's happening in the API world. Most recently, you've seen some other interviews with companies we're working with and partnering with, some of the technical insight from some of our team like Fran. But this week, we're going to loop back and touch on a topic we discussed before. So previously, we discussed API UX.
Right.
So API UX, for those that weren't part of the discussion last time, it's around building an API and the developer experience around the actual user outcomes for the person that's using the product as the end user, not just the developer. So in that context, there's been more discussion, Bruno, recently around abstraction and mediation of APIs.
Mm-hmm.
I know you frame it in a broader world of complexity and friction. So
Right.
Let's start on complexity and friction. What does that mean for you for an API provider point of view? And then we can dive into this mediation piece.
Right. Just going back slightly into the API UX. So API UX is looking at an API not just from the developer point of view, but more from an end user point of view, like users that are using the applications that interact with a certain API. So in that sense, the more your API is designed in a way that makes that usage easy, the better. I'm sure you all agree with it. So in that sense, complexity and friction means that on one side you have the API provider, and you have all the work needed by the API provider in order to offer a very simple, easy to use API, but that at the same time reflects the end use case.
Yep.
And on the other side, on the friction side, you have the API consumers who find the API more or less, with having more or less friction, depending on how easy it is to use and how it is closer to the end use case. So those are the two concepts. In the case of abstraction, the specific point we were talking about, so the end goal here is redesigning your API or creating different versions of your API in a way that makes it very, very easy. Number one, easy from a developer point of view to interact with it, and number two, it makes your API the best possible for a given use case.
So specifically, this is for your complexity and friction point of view. It's much greater complexity for the API provider of addressing documentation, developer experience for each, or also the structure of the API for each use case, but reduces the friction. So I guess the debate here is, where do people draw the line? I guess it's relative to the company's outcomes, but are you seeing any trends around this or what people are doing in these scenarios?
Yeah, it basically comes down to, I believe two different factors again. So we're seeing a movement towards more and more pushing more and more responsibility towards the developers, specifically related to mobile apps. So some people believe that it's much better to have a very broad open API that can do anything, and then the developer will choose how to mix and match the different pieces that your API offers. So this reduces the complexity from the API provider point of view, but pushes responsibility towards the developer, so they need to understand your API better and so they can integrate with it. And on the other side, like the opposite side of everything, you see more and more companies trying to provide different versions, they even call it different names, of their own, let's say, big API. So instead of offering a huge API that can do anything, they will offer 3 or 4 different APIs for very, very specific and limited use cases.
So two questions around this, because I guess the market at this point in time is just trying to learn about this, how you can approach this. But do you see certain movements in terms of maturity of companies as they become much larger or more enterprise focused or much more financially viable, that they start investing more around this and making specific additional investment? Or do you think it's not associated with that? It's more associated with maybe the sector they're in or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly think it's the opposite. I think that the more, the larger and more, financially viable a company is, the less they worry about it. Because then you have this, this offer and demand, game, that the more people that need to use your API, the less probably you are worried about making it easy to use.
So, can I take a guess at what you're saying there? This could be a way for earlier and mid-stage companies to invest in this as a way to get more developers on board. Then,
Yeah,
of making that easier.
I believe that's the case. Yes.
When they don't have the same marketing clout as the big
Yes.
kids, they can.
Yeah, exactly. Usually happens in early stage companies because of the nature of early stage, your product is not so evolved, so your API is not as big as one of these later stage companies. So you have a very limited set of features. So there's not much you can do with your own API. So it's a natural choice, let's say, for very early stage companies to keep the APIs very focused on what really matters.
So I guess the one thing then is they should be aware that this could be a competitive advantage then. Even though you're more focused, more limited, it could actually be a competitive advantage as long as you can articulate to the market clearly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So I think we're going to talk a lot more in the coming discussions of the Hitch API chat around complexity and friction. It's a continuous debate that's happening in the market. What we were actually discussing today, we just wanted to call out Ross Garrett from
Cloud Elements.
Yep, Cloud Elements. Thanks for helping me there. Who wrote this article. We think it's really interesting. So we think this is an ongoing discussion. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback around this, and we'll be contributing to the debate. Just so you know, there's lots more content on the Hitch blog as well. We've been launching lots of new product features. Lots of discussion around API support and how that's moving forward, so check that out. But otherwise, thank you for your time. We look forward to seeing you here again soon.